Good morning, everybody. This is Sue, Limey Sue, from Camden, New South Wales, Australia. A little bit different to the other day, so I just thought I'd all update you. But first, I want to give thanks to you that have shown an interest, to you that have supported me in my ups and my downs and my journeys with this wretched disease called Lyme disease. That unfortunately in Australia, as we all know, doesn't exist. Very few doctors know anything about it. Nurses, politicians just don't seem to care, and I actually place the blame for the lack of interest and knowledge solely on the Australian government, because they really aren't listening to us. Anyway, I thought I'd just update you with my journey because it's quite exciting what's happened to me, and I'm sure you can see a huge difference. So my journey, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. My journey actually started in 1984 when I had a massive rash, and from memory it was basically all over my body. It probably wasn't all over, but that's my memory. And my skin started peeling, so I went to the doctors, and that doctor of that day diagnosed me with toxic shock syndrome. Anyway, from that day onwards I've never been well at all. And then I think it was the next year I was diagnosed with sarcoidosis. I had the lumps in my lungs and the lumps on my legs. And for those that know anything about sarcoid, there's a very good chance, and I would say a 99-point chance, that this is related to tick-borne disease. A few years later I had breast cancer, I had a partial mastectomy, and I had radiotherapy. And thank goodness that I've been great ever since. So that was the start of my journey. In between those times as well, chronic fatigue had started to set in. And over the years I've basically had my ups and my downs. I have had periods where I've actually been reasonably okay. I was dragon boating. I went to Canada and dragon boated with dragons abreast. I used to play netball, and I used to jog, and I've actually been in the city to surf. So as you can see, I was a fairly active person, and that came and went over the years. Until probably about 12 years ago, I was really going downhill, and I must admit a lot of it, I'm pretty sure, was brought on by stress. So over the years I've actually worked out that your immune system has a very big play when it comes to Lyme disease and all autoimmune diseases. If your body is strong, you are able to fight these conditions. I'm not saying it will go away, because it won't, but you can actually go into a mode where you basically feel like you've got nothing wrong with you. But then you hit a rocky point in your life, whether it be emotional, whether it be illness or whatever, and one bang, back comes those same old feelings. So over the years I've had a number of conditions. I've had arthritis since about 1984, when I was first presented with all these problems. The sarcoid, as I say, was diagnosed in 1985, and it was from that time on I basically had chronic fatigue. Over the years, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, myalgia. I had a laminectomy. I've had frozen shoulders in both shoulders, and I had to have one operated on. I do have the MTHFR gene. I have a Giardia. I've got very, very bad obstructive sleep apnea, and I'm monitored through the Prince of Wales. I've got palmar fibrosis, and I could go and go on and on and on. So probably it was about 12 years ago I started to become aware that sarcoidosis could very well possibly, and I believe that it is caused by a bacteria. And I would say that that bacteria is probably to do with tick-borne disease. So I started doing a lot of research on the internet, which we then had. When I first got sick, there was no computer, no internet that I had. So basically we relied on our doctors as our research medium. Not like that today, which in a way is good, but we have to be careful we don't go overboard with diagnosing ourselves, which I am responsible for at times. Anyway, I found this doctor in America who actually, excuse me a minute, who was actually treating patients with sarcoidosis with antibiotics. And I started reading into it, and I thought, gee, this is quite interesting. So I actually contacted him, and believe it or not, he lives in the States, but he is from Perth, Australia. And I said to him that I was interested, and he said, you need to find a doctor that believes that sarc is caused by bacteria. And I said, oh my goodness, where do I start? And he actually gave me a name of a doctor who I went to, and she started treating me with antibiotics for sarcoidosis. I did start to get better, but I wasn't 100%. And then probably, I don't know whether it was 1 year, 2 years later, I was actually under an American company called Chronic Illness Recovery, and they've got some really good information on their site, so it'd be interesting for you to read up about it, especially about vitamin D and stuff like that. Anyway, it was around that time that it came to my knowledge about Lyme disease, which I had no idea. What's Lyme disease? I didn't even heard of a tick. I had no idea what a tick was. So I said to my doctor of the day, do you think it's worthwhile me testing for Borrelia? And she said, well, it's not going to harm. So I actually did a PCR test of my blood and my urine, and it came back positive for Borrelia. Didn't say what type of Borrelia, but Borrelia. So, wow, okay. Had to start learning about what was Lyme disease, what was Borrelia, what were ticks, and all the rest of it. And so my education started. In actual fact, I know, not I maybe, I know I am more knowledgeable than the majority of doctors in Australia. As the same for you guys, you are probably more knowledgeable than most doctors. And every opportunity, I don't hesitate to try and educate people and make them aware of what's happening to people in this country. And you'd be amazed. I was recently in RPA and I had about 6 doctors around my bed. Not one of them knew anything about Borrelia. Not one of them knew anything about tick-borne disease or Lyme disease. So the controversy reigns over tick-borne disease and Lyme disease. I think when you get to the stage I'm at, you in a way don't really care what it's called. But I'll give you a little bit of history of why there's such a controversy. Lyme disease is actually in America, and the cause of the infection is Borrelia burgdorferi. However, in Australia, certain scientists and everything have not been able to find Borrelia burgdorferi. And this, in a way, is the start of our troubles. Because what they're saying is, well, you don't have Borrelia burgdorferi, so we don't have Lyme disease in Australia. But there are a lot of people who claim that they haven't been overseas and they do carry Borrelia burgdorferi. Now, let me just, what year was it? I'm trying to think what year. So that year when I had that PCR test was in 2013, and like most people, I'd had Epstein-Barr. I'd actually had dengue fever, which I had no knowledge about. And I went to Germany in, I can't remember the year, 2013. I went to a clinic called BCA Clinic. Now, a very, very well-known pathologist was actually working at BCA at that time. And they tested my blood and they couldn't find Borrelia. But they found Babesia, Chlamydia pneumonia, Anaplasma, and I've also had a test where it looks like I possibly can be positive for rickettsia, which was done in Australia, but I need to have a second test. Now, I'd sort of forgotten about these tests, to be quite honest, and then the other day I found my tests and I was going through them and I thought, hang on a minute, they were testing me for Borrelia burgdorferi. That is a big hint. I don't have Borrelia burgdorferi, but what do I have? I don't know. It could be, according to Dr. Marla McManus, some indigenous strain, which we don't know what it is here in Australia, or it could be a European strain that hasn't yet been identified. But when I was actually under a study with New South Wales University, and they definitely found Borrelia in my blood, but they didn't find Borrelia burgdorferi. So this is where all the confusion lies. And if these people that are doing the tests aren't registered by NATA, the government says those tests don't count. They haven't been done by an accredited lab. But yet I've had a test at New South Wales Uni in the study, which I've got the results. I've had a test from Australian Biologics, both positive for Borrelia. So, if you're a politician and you're listening to this, please wake up. If I was a dog, I'd have absolutely no problem getting treatment. But no, I'm not a dog. I'm a human being. And as a human being, we get the feeling that we don't really count because nobody's helping us. I honestly have been to hell and back. Literally. If you go on my YouTube and watch some of the things that have happened to me, you would shake your head. I'm very lucky that I'm a very, very strong person and I've been able to cope with this. But a lot of people wouldn't. And hence, people, unfortunately, commit suicide. Which is very, very sad. And I wholly hold the government of Australia, not necessarily this current government, I'm talking about all governments, responsible for these deaths and for my suffering. So when I went to BCA clinic, I have to say the treatment there was very, very unsuccessful. And at that time, a lot of us was dismissed. I actually absconded for Germany. The reasons I won't go into, but I did abscond. I was so angry, so angry. While I was there, I was hospitalised and I had terrible, terrible diarrhoea. So what little bit of treatment I had was curtailed and they tried to give me some natural product, which is okay, but you can't. I've realised now you can't heal a person in 6 weeks. It's impossible. And that's why the majority of these clinics fail. Because especially the people that have had long-term Lyme disease or tick-borne disease, it's so embedded in our bodies, in our brains, in our joints, everywhere, that you couldn't possibly heal me in 6 weeks. But when I went there in, 2013, I had no idea. These people were pouting a cure. They soon took my money off me. I went through roughly $40,000 out of my superannuation fund, which was for my retirement. So I absconded to Germany and came home. While I was in Germany, I actually had my first seizure. It probably was a result of the treatment. My body was probably herxing, but that was the start of another journey. So after you've watched this video, if you want to know what my YouTube channel is, please just drop me a line. Oh, well, this will be on YouTube and I'll put it on that channel. So you'll be able to see the rest of the videos that are on that particular channel on YouTube. So where do I go to from there? I came home and all sorts of things happened to me. I bounced around the bed as if I was a galah. I couldn't walk, couldn't straighten myself. My talking got destroyed. Oh, I could go on and on and on. But you know what? The saddest thing is that through all that, the ins and outs of Campbelltown Hospital, which I honestly don't think too kindly of, they've put me in the too hard basket. And I'm pretty sure they've got a block on me there and seeing certain doctors. In fact, I'm convinced. And certain doctors, neurologists, they ended up basically telling me that it was all in my head. One neurologist at Campbelltown Hospital said that I needed to go into a nursing home, that it was time for me. I tried to tell them that I had tick-borne Lyme disease. Took no notice. So for the last probably 6-10 years, I've been through hell, literally. Thankfully, I've come out the other end. So what's changed? As you know, I was recently in hospital, and I'll just tell you what happened to me. About 3 weeks ago, I started to get, I've got neuropathy, by the way, and I have tried the latest cure with disulfiram. And unfortunately for me, because of the neuropathy, that's not going to work for me. So if you do have neuropathy, please be very careful going on disulfiram. I was on a very, very low dose, but it still got me. It took me months to get over that. Anyway, about 3 weeks ago, I started to get this strange feeling in my right arm. I've been having trouble with my speech, I've been having trouble with my walking. I couldn't walk without a stick or a frame. I've been in and out of wheelchairs over the years. I started to get this feeling in my arm, and I kept rubbing it. Anyway, one morning I woke up and I suddenly realised I couldn't lift my right arm. I could bend it, I could move my hands and fingers, but I couldn't lift my arm up like this at all. Today, I can lift my arm right up in the air. Anyway, about probably 2 days later, I woke up one morning and I checked my arm, still couldn't move it. Tried the left arm, could move the left arm. My walking was dismal. I basically couldn't walk. My talking was virtually non-existent. Anyway, I was in the garden and all of a sudden I felt something in my arm and I realised my left arm had gone. So I couldn't move my left arm. So I couldn't raise my left arm, I couldn't raise my right arm. I was on my own at the time and I was scared, I have to say, I was scared. I thought, what the heck is going on here? I can't hardly walk. All I could do is shuffle because I couldn't lift my feet off the ground, either leg. I couldn't talk. I couldn't lift my arms. So I went into the bedroom and tried to get dressed. Couldn't reach my clothes out of the wardrobe. Oh my goodness. I have to say, I did have a cry. That did it for me. I thought, I could see that nursing home in my vision. I could see that nursing home. So stupidly, I called O because I was rather scared. And I managed to get outside and wait for them. And they took me to Campbelltown Hospital. Well, once again, can't find anything wrong with me. It's all in your head, darling. Now, before all this happened, I had a really good job. I was National Sales Manager for Confident Care, which is a division of Alsco Group of companies. I've travelled all over the world. I was very successful in winning government contracts, and we sold patient care products. Mattresses, pressure relieving mattresses, products for people bathing, oral swabs for people to clean their teeth who can't use a toothbrush. And again, you know, with those products that we sold, that the neglect in the hospitals is terrible. You know, you go to hospital, you know, they tell you, or the doctors tell you that you have to keep well hydrated, keep well hydrated. Um, but do they give you any water? You could be sitting in emergency for over 24 hours. They haven't bothered to see if you need a drink, haven't bothered to see if you want to go to the toilet. You don't have a buzzer. They haven't bothered, yeah, to ask you if you want to clean. Oh, I've said that, clean your teeth, have a drink. So, yeah, there's a lot of things wrong in the healthcare system. A lot of things wrong. You know, things that they say that should happen just don't. So I think they kept me. No, they did admit me. They did admit me, and I was asked to see the neurologist, but an excuse was made. And like I said, I'm pretty sure I've been blocked from the system. Those doctors have put a block on me. And I'm pretty sure there's a flag on my records, do not admit this woman. Because they were going to send me home. And then one nurse that I managed to grab, and I wanted to go to the toilet, saw me walking, and I nearly fell over. And she says, "You can't go home like this." And I shouldn't have gone home like that. So they did, unfortunately, they would say, unfortunately, have to admit me. And I was put under a specialist who I have to say is very, very understanding and good. And he actually liaised with a doctor at RPA because they were doing muscle testing on me because I'd got markers. My ANA was like about 645 or something, which is a strong indication that something is going on in my immune system. Red flags, guys, red flags. But do they do anything about it? No. So I actually had an appointment at RPA on the Thursday. So I wanted to be discharged because I really wanted to keep this appointment. So this doctor discharged me and he liaised with this rheumatologist at RPA, who I have to say has been very, very good to me and very, very understanding. And I went to see this rheumatologist, and what should happen when I got in the waiting room, I had a turn, a seizure or whatever, which the neurologist put down again as all in my head. There's nothing really wrong with me. But they did admit me because I wasn't safe. I couldn't walk. I couldn't move my arms. I could hardly talk. So I was in there for about 2 days. And I decided I wanted to leave. I had a plan. And that plan was to see a doctor that had helped me many times before with my sarcoid and when I had breast cancer and with all these different autoimmune conditions I have with my thyroid and blah, 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 blah. And that doctor is Dr. Sandra Cabot, who is sort of known as the liver doctor. And she writes books and she volunteers for the Angel Flight. And she has her own aeroplane, which she stores at Bankstown Airport. And at least once a week, she volunteers and goes out to sick people. I'm not quite sure whether she treats them or whether she brings them back to Sydney for one of the major hospitals, but she volunteers her time at least once a week to Angel Flight. She's a very, very compassionate doctor, and I've got great respect for her. And while I was in RPA, I cast my mind back to Dr. Sandra Cabot, and I thought, I've got to go and see this lady again. Nobody else can give me one little bit of hope. Now, normally to get to see Sandra, you have to put weeks in advance. And I got a period where my language skills was a little bit better, so I called up and couldn't believe it. I'm sure it was orchestrated by our dear Lord in heaven. They had a vacancy, a cancellation on Saturday, so I grabbed it. After telling all the doctors and lecturing them about Borrelia and Lyme disease and tick-borne disease, and suggesting they all go away and do some homework and go to the Lyme Disease Association of Australia and the Carl McManus Foundation and start reading up about the effects of this disease. As I've said to many, many doctors and nurses, it's not just me like this. There's a stack of people out there, thousands of us, just in Australia, never alone in America. You know, they claim 30,000 people a year are diagnosed in America. And certain people with great knowledge, and I have no reason to doubt them, reckon that figure could double it. And the same thing is happening here in this country. But we have nobody to help us, nobody to treat us. If you're newly diagnosed and you're a TV star, you might be lucky and get admitted to hospital and get antibiotics. But the average person, no, doesn't exist in Australia. So I checked out of RPA and went to see Sandra on Saturday morning at 9:30. I struggled to get into her rooms, but managed to, just about. And she had a little bit of my history, and she knew that I had Lyme disease. And I started to explain what had been happening. Now, this lovely doctor believes in Lyme disease, but she's treating me as a patient with autoimmune disease. And I'm pretty glad about that, because if she treated me as a Lyme patient, the AMA would probably take her license off her, like they have done lots of other doctors in this country. To the point now that we basically have no Lyme doctors left in Australia. The one that was treating me no longer wanted to see me. Been going to this doctor for 10, 12 years. Basically turned her back on me. Why? I understand why, and I accept the reasons. Because this doctor had thrown so much money into her practice, it was her livelihood. She didn't want to risk losing her license, and I don't blame her. So that left me with absolutely nobody that understood what was going on in my body. So Sandra said, you have that much inflammation in your body. It's in your brain, it's everywhere, and we need to get it under control. She has told me this before, and I have done it before, but I'd got that fed up. I'd basically thrown out all my supplements, stopped taking them, ignored diet, and maybe that was what made me worse. So in a way, I have to take some of the blame. She said, Sue, you need to go on a gluten-free, which I know because I do have the celiac gene, and I have been told before that Limeys must go on a gluten-free diet, which I have, but wasn't at the moment because I was just so fed up. Gluten-free, dairy-free, wheat-free, grain-free, and sugar-free. Oh my goodness. No chips, no biscuits, no cake. But hey, it's a small price to pay if I want to get better. So basically the ball's in my court. Anyway, she said, I want you to have an infusion, which I have had them there before, an NAC and a vitamin C infusion. So I had the infusion. That afternoon, I felt like there was some slight changes in my body. Something was happening. The next day, I realised that my speech was coming back. It was still very funny, but it was coming back. My arms, I could lift a little fraction off the bed. My walking was a little bit better. Wow. Could that be the infusion? Yes, it was. The infusion. The next day, I could talk a little bit better again. I could lift my arms a little bit further, higher. I could almost scratch the top of my head because I thought before, how am I going to wash my hair? I can't even get my hand up to my head. My walking was coming back. And over the next few days, everything gradually got better. My talking got better. My walking got better. I didn't need the stick. What? No, I didn't need the stick. I could lift my arm in the air. I could talk like a normal human being. Wow. So that Saturday was the day that my life changed. I had to go to a birthday lunch that day, so I basically had my own last supper. I shouldn't have done, but I had 2 glasses of champagne. I did pretty well on the food. I had vegetables and steak, so that's allowed. So, okay, what supplements has she put me on? Let's have a look. Vitamin C, ascorbic acid, selenium, vitamin D3, which certain people will be horrified at, but I'm going to give it a go this time. Magnesium, ultra potent powder. Now, Sandra makes all these herself, so I know that they're good, they're safe, and they've been made to help people like me. Collagen powder. And of course, NAC. Now, what Sandra says is that the NAC, and if you follow the diet, that will make glutathione. So you don't need to take glutathione because it's basically, majority of the glutathione out there is not absorbed by the body. So I need to put my body in a state where it's making its own glutathione. Now, unfortunately, I still have massive pains in my legs and my shoulders. And she diagnosed me with polymyalgia rheumatica. And I am actually on a very strong painkiller. That's something that I'm going to have to try and work out. She really doesn't want me to go on prednisone because I have so many other issues. I've got pages and pages of things that have happened to me over the years. You know, I've got carpal tunnel. I've developed lymphocytic colitis, hypothyroid, carpal tunnel syndrome. I've had peritonitis. I've had Candida tropicalis. I've got lichen planus. I've had injections in my shoulders again for bursitis, and I've got bursitis everywhere. So that really is my story in a nutshell, and why I am now smiling and talking and being able to tell you, my darling friends and family, what's been happening to me over the years and what's been happening to me at the moment. So, to Dr. Sandra Cabot, you work for Angel Flight as a volunteer, but you're an angel in my eyes. What you've done for me, not one other doctor has been able to do. I cannot thank you enough. So friends, family, that's my story. I'm still very, very tired, and by the time it comes to night time and I have my painkiller because my legs are in agony, I'm usually asleep pretty early. But I'm so happy. I can walk. I can talk. I can lift my arms. I'm not having the same trouble with my eyes that I was. If I shut my eyes, I couldn't open them. I was told that was all in my head. Oh, dear, dear, dear. Anyway, I've raved on enough and tried to explain to you all. And I hope this is enlightening for people that perhaps don't know what's wrong with them. Explore the possibility that you do have Borrelia or co-infections caused by ticks. And remember, any biting insect has the ability of transferring this bacteria to you. So please take care. Love you all.